and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on.
I'm awash with the stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavour show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of the UK's second-largest city, Birmingham.
When Mr. Dunkley came to Birmingham first, he chatted to most of us, and I remember telling him that I wasn't very happy about the kind of programmes I was doing on farming. I was the farming producer. I felt that the only people who could understand them were the people who knew anyway, and the people who ought to be hearing about this couldn't understand. They were too technical. And he thought it would be a good idea if he called a conference in Birmingham of all farming folk from all over the region, which he did. And this was a pretty high-powered conference, and at the end of it, in fact, it broke up the conference with a laughter of it. This farmer from Lincolnshire, a man called Henry Bird, said, "What we need is a farming Dick Barton." Well, I thought about this a little bit, and I got in touch with him and went over to see him. And what he had in mind, of course, was that the dangers and the risks in farming were just as great as the cliffhangers of Dick Barton. And he was a great grower of black currants and seeds and herbage seeds, and he knew that the whole of his living could go in a thunderstorm, what you will. Well, that's fine, that was excitement, but it wasn't a daily cereal. So I got back to this, and I discussed the matter once or twice with Ted Mason, who was then writing Dick Barton, and we formulated this farming family with two neighbours. It was a big thing to tackle. It was revolutionary as far as farming in the BBC was concerned. They were only concerned with talks. Anyway, I took this to Dennis Morris, who was then head of programmes, and he gave us a trial run. It was a wheat week in the morning. Fortunately for us, it was a wet wheat week, and we gathered some listeners, so that by the end of the week, when it came off its trial run, there was quite a little bit of correspondence saying, "Oi, what are you going to do about this?" Well, obviously, such a programme as this was beyond the resources of a region, and it was sent through to the head of light programme. Well, the head of light programme was more or less on the change. Somebody was going out and somebody was coming in, and actually when Kenneth Adam came into the seat, one of the first things he looked at was the script for this week's Archers, and a note to say the recordings were available. He heard them, liked them, thought they had potentiality, and gave us a trial once again in the morning. And then after about a very short time, about a month or 5 weeks, it was decided that this could have a permanent place, that Dick Barton was coming off the air, we could go into their spot. And you see, it was originally, in my mind originally, it was distinctly a farming programme. I thought this is the easy way to get over these facts through the personal reactions of a farmer to modern agricultural treatment. But in collaboration with the scriptwriters, Mason and Webb then, they very soon changed this for the good. And there had to be far more entertainment. We suffered a little bit by making a sandwich of the farming information, which didn't quite do. And then we got down to a formula which is basically 10% of education, 30% of general information about the countryside, and 60% of entertainment. And it made the thing tick. And people grew, the families grew, and they've grown up, and they've died, they've married, they've had children. And it's just grown, and there it is. It just caught the imagination of the people.
Tell me about the involvement of listeners.
Well, the thing I think that I find tremendously fascinating is that you do get listeners who will associate themselves with a particular character. And this becomes very real to them, and they feel everything that this character does is a personal thing. And if we make the character do something that they don't think is right, they don't hesitate to tell us about it at all. In fact, if we marry a girl to the wrong man, that's the end. And then if by any chance she has a baby with what they consider the wrong man, that's it. And they mean this. I mean, this is really serious to them. I think that's a great compliment to the program. But it's quite a responsibility. And then, of course, there's the other side of it, where people see their friends and neighbours, or even members of their family, as the characters, which is not quite as serious. It doesn't have quite a personal impact as the other one, but this is important. I mean, they say, well, where did we, this must be a copy of someone. And we often get, say, accused, yes, probably that's the right word, of drawing our characters from life and really taking someone. People will believe that they have been taken as the example. Because it can be a disease. You'll get stuck with this, it becomes an awful, enormous part of life. An enormous part of life. I know people who've listened to every program and wouldn't miss it. The telephone's taken off the hook. The doors are locked. Won't answer the door, won't answer anything when the Archers is on. Well, this is something.
Did anyone ever foresee this growth?
Oh, no. I don't think so for a moment. I certainly didn't anyway. I could see that I was interested, of course, enthusiastic about it, but I never dreamt that 13 years later I would be talking about it. Certainly didn't. And what is more, it's completely shaken all the people who were responsible for agriculture in the BBC at that time. They laughed their heads off when I brought this up at a meeting. But, well, it's made its grade. We have got a lot of interesting information over not only to farmers but to townspeople to know more about the countryside. See, I felt there were so many townspeople with cars and bicycles and what you will getting their recreation in the countryside, and that we can improve their knowledge about the countryside and their enjoyment of the countryside by hearing little bits. And they go and check in the country to see whether we're right or not. We were always determined right from the very beginning that as far as it was humanly possible, our agricultural and our horticultural material should be accurate. And what we didn't envisage, of course, was that having established accuracy in those two things, our listeners then expected automatically that everything we touch would be just as accurate. Now that's a very big task indeed. If you touch a legal situation or get involved with the police or nursing, or even if you buy a traction engine, then the people who are concerned with traction engines expect you to know as much as they know. One little example of that, Walter Gabriel was talking one day about there being a bracket on his engine where for a dynamo, so it was an fair engine. And then about a week later, he and Ned Larkin were having a clean round this thing, and they were talking about cleaning the spokes of the flywheel. Well, I had numerous letters come in and say that on these fairground engines there were no spokes, it was a solid flywheel. Well, you've got to be as accurate as that, and that goes right through everything we do. Of course we make slip-ups there, we must do. You start talking about town and country planning matters, or you call a public health officer a sanitary inspector, you're in right trouble. Because this was brought in a few years ago. But it's really worth tackling, it's worth doing. We do it rather jointly. I suppose I'm more responsible for this than anyone else. Occasionally the writers will go off, they'll get enthusiastic about a thing, and the words flow out. And my word, I've got to be quite sure when I read it back again to see that all this has been checked, because you really can get in a mess. The program, The Archers, is, as we see it, true picture of English rural life. It is sometimes larger than life simply because it's a dramatic presentation and it needs that to make its points. But we're perfectly happy, happy is perhaps the wrong word, but happy really to take people up to their death. And the program must grow old. People are being born, they're growing up, they're being educated, they're getting married, having families of their own. And we must go through the natural pattern. I don't see any worries about this at all. It's very unfortunate for the actor concerned, but without any shadow of doubt they come back into something else. If they're good actors, as they all are, they can make the necessary changes to put themselves back. But this is vital, this movement on. I think many other serials have probably failed here in the fact that they don't go on. And that's where you lose this naturalness. This, I feel, is vital, absolutely vital. I suppose we live life a little slower we don't get quite as old as our oldest quite as fast as normal people. But once again, that's dramatic license, and I think you've got to take that. But we see the day when our leading characters who have held the program up till now will be out of the program, and their place will be taken by the younger generation, moving us on to another step, another series of interests, developments. And this will be a great loss to listeners, no doubt. But this is life. It's a great loss when we lose our own friends and our own family. But people do go on, and it's just the same with the program.
So what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just moving mics around.
So what do you do?
I do the spot effects on the arches. Any
Are you what we call Foley then?
kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar. That's,
This one.
yep. That's.
I mean, Hayley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. It's due in 2 months. Not much chance of that now. No. I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind, but I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them, Caroline. I mean,
I think The Archers has had this immense popularity over the years, basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever